Some action movies become legends, defining an era with explosive stunts, high-energy fights, and heroes who take on impossible odds. Others pack just as much punch, but never get the same recognition. In the 80s and early 90s, no studio churned out more adrenaline-fueled, over-the-top action than Canon Films. From martial arts showdowns to all-out war zones, they built a legacy of wild, unapologetic entertainment. But while films like Bloodsport and Delta Force became genre staples, many others slipped through the cracks, forgotten by mainstream audiences but cherished by die-hard action fans. What made these films special? Why didn't they get the spotlight they deserved? And are they worth rediscovering? Let's find out. This is 15 underrated action movies from Canon Films. When it comes to ninja flicks, few did it better than Canon Films, and Revenge of the Ninja is easily one of their most impressive entries. Starring martial artist Sho Kosugi, the film follows Cho Osaki, a former ninja who moves to America to escape his violent past, only to be dragged back into the shadows by betrayal and vengeance. The film showcased Kosugi at the peak of his career. Director Sam Firstenberg brought his fast-paced style, while the fight choreography, especially the rooftop showdown, made it a cult classic. This one is a hidden gem for fans of Michael Dudikoff. In what was intended as a sequel to Chuck Norris's Invasion U.S.A., Dudikoff plays Matt Hunter, a former secret agent battling a white supremacist militia. Directed by Sam Firstenberg, this was one of Canon's more serious-minded action thrillers. However, its lack of a theatrical push meant it never reached the same level as American Ninja. Speaking of Invasion U.S.A., this Chuck Norris vehicle is Canon at its most outrageous. The premise? A Soviet-backed terrorist invasion of America. And who can stop it? Only one man, Matt Hunter, played by a stone-faced, Uzi-wielding Chuck Norris. Norris took creative control of the film, and the result was pure chaos. The Christmas Mall shootout, the destruction of suburban homes, and the climactic bazooka duel. It's all insanity in the best way.
Heads or tails? Tails.
Indiana Jones had Kingdom of the Crystal Skull, Canon had Firewalker. Chuck Norris and Louis Gossett Jr. team up as fortune hunters on a mystical treasure quest, complete with ancient artifacts, jungle battles, and even some supernatural elements. Canon wanted this to be their own Indiana Jones-style adventure, but the blend of comedy and action didn't land as well as they hoped. While Firewalker is a fun time, it lacks the martial arts spectacle that fans expected from Norris. It's not bad, it's just not what audiences wanted from him. This is Canon's most expensive film ever, starring Sylvester Stallone in what is essentially Rocky, but with arm wrestling. It's an underdog story about a trucker fighting for the love of his estranged son while competing in arm wrestling tournaments. With a budget of $25 million, Over the Top was a gamble that didn't pay off at the box office, but its sheer commitment to its absurd premise has made it a cult favorite. Cyborg was a low-budget attempt at dystopian sci-fi, originally planned as a sequel to Masters of the Universe, before financial issues forced Canon to rework it into a new film. Despite its micro-budget, it's a brutal and stylish piece of work. Albert Pyun's grimy direction, combined with Van Damme's athletic fight sequences, made it a sleeper hit in video rentals. Canon wanted their own Star Wars, but they got Masters of the Universe. Dolph Lundgren as He-Man, Frank Langella delivering a Shakespearean Skeletor, and a weird subplot about teenagers on Earth. Budget cuts led to unfinished scenes, and the film bombed, but Langella's Skeletor alone makes this worth revisiting. With Michael Dudikoff stepping away from the American Ninja franchise, David Bradley took up the mantle as the new lead. The plot introduces a sinister scientist experimenting on fighters to create the ultimate soldier, and it's up to Bradley's Sean Davidson to stop him. The film introduced more hand-to-hand combat sequences and exotic locations, but without Dudikoff, it failed to capture the same magic as its predecessors. Still, it remains an essential part of the series. Jeff Speakman, best known for The Perfect Weapon, returns in Street Knight, a lesser-known but hard-hitting action thriller. Speakman plays Jake Barrett, a former cop who is reluctantly pulled out of retirement to help protect a young witness caught in the middle of a violent gang war. Unlike the more outlandish action films Canon was known for, Street Knight takes a grittier, more realistic approach. Though it never reached mainstream success, it remains a favorite among martial arts fans looking for a more authentic action experience. Charles Bronson's Paul Kersey takes on an entire gang in a crime-infested city. Armed with a machine gun and an absurd body count, this is Death Wish dialed up to 11. Directed by Michael Winner, this third installment in the Death Wish franchise saw a major shift toward high-octane, almost cartoonish violence compared to its grittier predecessors. The film was shot primarily in London, using abandoned areas to double as a crime-ridden New York. Despite its excessive action and campy tone, Death Wish 3 developed a cult following and remains one of Canon Films' most outrageous entries. After the chaotic bloodbath of Death Wish 3, Canon tried to return the franchise to a more grounded, revenge-driven story. In Death Wish 4: The Crackdown, Charles Bronson's Paul Kersey goes after a drug cartel after his girlfriend's daughter dies from an overdose. Directed by J. Lee Thompson, who had worked with Bronson on multiple films, the movie still delivered plenty of action, but with a slightly more restrained approach. Though it didn't match the impact of the earlier entries, it remains a solid action thriller with Bronson in fine form.
Open fire! Fire!
In a departure from their typical urban action settings, Canon took a stab at the Vietnam War genre with Platoon Leader, starring Michael Dudikoff. The film follows a green officer struggling to earn the respect of his battle-hardened platoon while fighting off relentless Viet Cong attacks. Directed by Aaron Norris, Chuck Norris's brother, Platoon Leader aimed for a more serious and gritty depiction of war compared to the studio's usual explosive action fare. Though it wasn't in the same league as Platoon or Full Metal Jacket, it did offer some solid battle sequences and gave Dudikoff a chance to showcase a different side of his action hero persona. The sequel to American Ninja brings back Michael Dudikoff as Joe Armstrong, who, alongside Steve James, takes on an army of super ninjas on a remote Caribbean island. Directed by Sam Furstenberg, this entry ramps up the action and martial arts choreography, delivering even more impressive fight scenes than the original. Dudikoff and James had excellent chemistry, and the film's fast-paced action made it a fan favorite. Despite its outlandish plot, American Ninja 2 remains one of Canon's most entertaining sequels. Chuck Norris takes a different approach in Hero and the Terror, playing a detective hunting a brutal serial killer who has escaped from prison. The film blends action with suspense, attempting to create a thriller vibe rather than an all-out martial arts showcase. Though Norris is mostly known for his high-kicking action films, this one allowed him to show a more dramatic side. The slower pacing and psychological elements may not have resonated with all of his fans, but it remains an interesting departure from his usual fare. Chuck Norris closes out the Missing in Action trilogy with Braddock Missing in Action 3, a film that dives into a more personal story. This time, Colonel Braddock discovers that his long-lost Vietnamese wife is alive and that he has a son. He heads back to Vietnam on a rescue mission, battling the oppressive regime holding them captive. Directed by Aaron Norris, the film retains the explosive action of the series, but adds an emotional core that wasn't as prominent in the earlier films. Though not as well received as the first Missing in Action, it provides a fitting conclusion to Braddock's journey. So what happened to these films? Some were buried under better-known franchises, others had poor distribution, but one thing's for sure, Canon Films delivered action like no one else. Maybe it's time these films got the love they deserve. Thanks for watching, and don't forget to subscribe for more awesome content.